Before 50 Cent completely changed the direction of hip-hop, before G-Unit took over the streets, before everybody started calling Ja Rule corny online, there was a moment where Murder Inc. felt unstoppable. And honestly, if you weren't outside during the early 2000s, you probably don't fully understand how dominant they really were. Because Murder Inc. wasn't just making hits, they were making the soundtrack to people's lives. Club records, relationship records, summer records, pain records. Everything they touched sounded emotional. That's what separated them from everybody else. Now when people think about Murder Inc. today, they usually think about Ja Rule versus 50 Cent, the downfall, the memes, the jokes. But before all of that, Ja Rule was one of the biggest artists in the world. Not just hip-hop, the world. That's important. Because younger fans today mostly know Ja Rule from internet jokes and old beef conversations. But during his peak, this man was dominating radio, everywhere. You could not escape Ja Rule records. And honestly, part of what made Murder Inc. so dangerous was they figured out a formula nobody else fully mastered yet. Melodic street music. That mix of pain, romance, rap, hooks, R&B vocals. That became their signature sound. And once Ashanti entered the picture, it was over. Now let's be real. Ashanti changed everything for Murder Inc. because Ja Rule already had street records and crossover appeal. But Ashanti added emotion, softness, melody, replay value. Suddenly Murder Inc. records started sounding like club songs, breakup songs, relationship songs, ride around at night songs, all at the same time. That formula was genius, and honestly, the chemistry between Ja Rule and Ashanti carried an entire era of music, always on time, mesmerized, wonderful. Those records still work today. That's how strong the music was. Now, another important person in this story is Irv Gotti, because Irv wasn't just a label executive. He was basically the architect behind the entire movement. And one thing about Irv Gotti, the man understood emotion in music. That's why Murder Inc. records sounded different from everybody else's. They felt dramatic, like movie soundtracks. Everything sounded larger than life. And during this era, Murder Inc. basically owned radio, especially New York radio. But honestly, they weren't just dominating New York, they were dominating mainstream music, period. MTV, 106 and Park, BET, award shows. Everywhere you looked, Murder Inc. artists were charting. And the craziest part? Ja Rule didn't even sound like anybody else at the time. That rough, screaming, melodic delivery became iconic. People copied it later, but during that moment, Ja Rule's sound felt unique. And whether people admit it now or not, that sound influenced a lot of future melodic street artists. Now, another reason Murder Inc. exploded culturally was timing. This was during the shiny early 2000s era. Music videos looked expensive, everybody wore designer, the clubs felt glamorous, and Murder Inc. fit that atmosphere perfectly. The women loved the records, the streets respected Ja Rule enough, radio loved the hooks. That combination made them untouchable for a minute. And honestly, for a while, it looked like Ja Rule might become one of the defining superstars of the entire generation. That's how big things got. Now, meanwhile, Ashanti started becoming a phenomenon herself. And this is important because Ashanti wasn't just Ja Rule's hook singer. Nah, she became a star, fast. Her voice felt emotional without trying too hard, natural, smooth, and she had that early 2000s aura that connected perfectly with audiences, especially women listeners. That widened Murder Inc.'s audience even more, because now the label wasn't just attracting rap fans. Now they had R&B fans, women audiences, mainstream radio listeners, everybody. And honestly, that's why Murder Inc. became so powerful commercially. They mastered crossover music before everybody else fully figured it out. Now during this era, it genuinely looked like Murder Inc. might run hip-hop for years. The money was flowing, the records were massive, the artists were everywhere. Ja Rule looked untouchable, Ashanti looked unstoppable, Irv Gotti looked like a genius. Everything was clicking, but behind the scenes, a storm was already building. Because while Murder Inc. was dominating the charts, there was another rapper in New York quietly preparing for war. A rapper that already had personal history with Ja Rule. A rapper that survived getting shot 9 times. A rapper that felt blackballed by the industry. 50 Cent. And honestly, nobody at Murder Inc. fully realized yet that hip-hop was about to change forever. Because once 50 came back, the entire energy of rap started shifting away from melody and back toward pure disrespect. While Murder Inc. was dominating radio, 50 Cent was preparing revenge. And honestly, that's really what this whole era became, revenge. Because by the early 2000s, this wasn't just music anymore, this was personal. Now, one thing younger fans don't fully understand is the Ja Rule and 50 Cent beef did not randomly appear out of nowhere. This tension went back years. Queens history, street politics, ego, industry competition, and once both of them started becoming stars, the situation exploded publicly. Now at first, Ja Rule looked like the clear winner commercially. That's important, because before Get Rich or Die Tryin', Ja Rule was already established. He had hit records, radio dominance, MTV presence, platinum albums, mainstream success. Meanwhile, 50 was still fighting his way back into the industry after getting blackballed. But what made 50 dangerous wasn't just the music, it was the hunger. This man came back sounding like somebody who genuinely wanted to destroy everything. And honestly, that energy connected immediately, especially after the shooting, because surviving 9 bullets completely changed 50's image publicly. He stopped feeling like a normal rapper. Now he felt mythological, untouchable, like somebody too angry to fail. And once the mixtape run started exploding, the streets slowly started shifting toward 50. That's important, because while Murder Inc. controlled radio, 50 started controlling street conversation, barbershops, DVDs, mixtapes, freestyles. Everywhere you looked, people were talking about him. And unlike Ja Rule's melodic, polished records, 50 sounded raw, dangerous, hungry. That contrast changed everything psychologically. Now eventually, 50 started directly attacking Ja Rule again publicly. And honestly, the disrespect level was insane. Because 50 didn't just diss Ja Rule musically, he attacked his image, his authenticity, his masculinity, his credibility. And once rap fans start questioning your authenticity, things get dangerous fast, especially during the early 2000s. Now this is where 50's genius started showing, because he understood something most rappers didn't. Humiliation spreads faster than music. That's why records like Back Down hit so hard, because 50 wasn't trying to make competitive rap songs. Nah, he wanted to embarrass people publicly. And honestly, fans loved watching it happen. That's what made this era so addictive. It felt like hip-hop warfare in real time. Now, meanwhile, Get Rich or Die Tryin' drops. And suddenly, the entire music industry shifts overnight. Because once In Da Club exploded, 50 stopped feeling like the underdog. Now, he became the biggest rapper in the world. That changed the power dynamic instantly. And honestly, that's when things started getting scary for Murder Inc. Because Ja Rule's biggest strength was mainstream success. But now 50 had the streets, mainstream audiences, radio, mixtape credibility, Eminem, Dr. Dre, G-Unit momentum, all at once. That combination was deadly. Now another thing that hurt Murder Inc. badly was timing, because hip-hop culture itself was changing emotionally. The shiny melodic era was fading. Fans wanted aggression again, mixtape energy, street energy, disrespectful energy, and 50 represented all of that perfectly. Meanwhile, Ja Rule's melodic style slowly started becoming the thing people mocked instead of celebrated. That's how fast hip-hop changes. 1 minute, you're the hottest artist in the world. Next minute, the culture decides your sound isn't cool anymore. And honestly, that shift happened fast to Ja Rule. Now, during this time, G-Unit also became a massive problem for Murder Inc. because it wasn't just 50 attacking anymore. Now it was Lloyd Banks, Tony Yayo, Young Buck, the entire G-Unit movement. And the movement felt unstoppable. Every week there was another freestyle, another diss, another interview, another joke aimed at Ja Rule. The pressure never stopped. And eventually, fans started picking sides culturally. That's important, because once hip-hop audiences emotionally choose a winner in a beef, it becomes very hard to recover, especially online. Now, another thing that made 50 dangerous during this period was trolling. And honestly, 50 might be the greatest troll in rap history. Seriously. The man understood marketing through humiliation before social media even existed. Everything became a joke to him. And once fans started laughing at Ja Rule instead of fearing him, the aura around Murder Inc. started weakening publicly. That's the key. The aura disappeared. And in hip-hop, aura matters almost as much as music. Now, meanwhile, Ashanti was stuck in the middle of all this chaos. Because unlike Ja Rule and 50, Ashanti wasn't really built for rap warfare. She was trying to make music, build her career, protect her image. But because she was attached to Murder Inc., she got dragged into the storm anyway. And honestly, that's part of what makes the Murder Inc. downfall feel tragic historically, because the label still had talent, still had hits, still had emotional connection with fans. But culturally, the momentum was shifting toward G-Unit fast, and once the culture starts moving against you, sometimes even hit records can't save you anymore. But things were about to get even worse for Murder Inc. because soon, the problems would stop being just musical. Now the FBI was about to enter the story. At first, the Ja Rule and 50 Cent war still looked survivable for Murder Inc. That's important because even while 50 was gaining momentum, Murder Inc. still had hits, still had radio, still had Ashanti, still had mainstream attention. And honestly, a lot of people thought the beef would eventually just cool off. But then, everything started collapsing at the same time. And this is what makes the Murder Inc. story feel tragic historically. Because the downfall wasn't caused by just one thing. It was the beef, the culture shifting, public perception, legal problems, internet humiliation, all crashing together at once. Now, one of the biggest turning points came when the FBI raided Murder Inc. offices. And once that happened, the energy around the label changed permanently. Because now this wasn't just rap beef. Now federal agents were entering the conversation. That instantly changes public perception. Now the raid itself became heavily connected to allegations involving Supreme McGriff. And if you know early 2000s New York street history, you know Supreme's name carried serious weight. The government started investigating possible money laundering connections tied to Murder Inc. And honestly, even if fans didn't fully understand the legal details, the optics looked bad. Very bad. Because once the FBI starts raiding your label publicly, people immediately assume, yeah, something's wrong. Now, meanwhile, 50 Cent and G-Unit were still applying pressure non-stop. That's important. Because Murder Inc. didn't even really get time to breathe during this period. Everywhere they turned, another diss, another interview, another joke, another G-Unit freestyle, the pressure never stopped. And culturally, fans started shifting toward 50 emotionally. That's the key. Emotionally. Because hip-hop fans love underdogs, and at this point 50 had successfully positioned himself as the real street rapper, the dangerous rapper, the fearless rapper. Meanwhile, Ja Rule slowly started becoming viewed as commercial, soft, corny, and honestly, that perception change destroyed Murder Inc. more than people realize, because aura matters in hip-hop. Once the audience stops believing in your image, everything starts falling apart fast. Now, another thing that hurt Ja Rule badly was the internet. And this was early internet culture too. Forums, message boards, DVD clips, early viral conversations. People started turning Ja Rule into jokes online constantly. And once the internet decides you're the punchline, that's hard to recover from, especially in rap. Now, meanwhile, Ashanti was trying to survive the chaos while protecting her own career. And honestly, this part of the story gets overlooked a lot because Ashanti still had fans, still had hits, still had radio records, still had mainstream support. But the problem was, she was attached to Murder Inc. during its collapse. And once the label's reputation started sinking publicly, everybody connected to it got affected. That's unfortunate, but it's reality. Now, another thing that made the Murder Inc. downfall feel painful was how fast everything changed. Seriously. 1 minute Ja Rule is one of the biggest artists in the world. Next minute, the culture suddenly acts like they never liked him. That's brutal psychologically, especially because if you go back and actually listen to those records today, a lot of them still hit. Always on Time, Put It On Me, Mesmerize, Wonderful. Those records still work emotionally. But during that moment, the culture decided G-Unit represented the future and Murder Inc. represented the past. Now, another major problem was that hip-hop itself was becoming more aggressive again. The shiny melodic crossover era started fading. Fans wanted street energy, mixtape energy, disrespectful bars, aggressive personalities. 50 represented all of that perfectly. Meanwhile, Ja Rule's emotional melodic style slowly became the exact thing people mocked. That shift hurt badly. And honestly, that's part of why this story feels more tragic than funny now years later. Because looking back historically, Murder Inc. wasn't untalented. They weren't weak musically. They simply got caught on the wrong side of one of the biggest cultural shifts in hip-hop history. Now eventually, even the industry itself started distancing away from Murder Inc. Radio support weakened. Momentum slowed. The aura disappeared. And once the aura disappears in hip-hop, The collapse usually comes fast afterward. Now, during the same time, 50 kept doing something genius psychologically. He kept making the beef entertaining. That's important because people weren't just watching a rap war anymore. They were watching humiliation, and every joke aimed at Ja Rule slowly made the public take him less seriously. That's devastating for a rapper's image, especially when your entire career was originally built on confidence and dominance. Now, before we get into the full humiliation era, the G-Unit shirts, the trolling, the psychological warfare, I need y'all to do me a quick favor. If you're enjoying this documentary so far, hit that like button, subscribe to Fake Famous, and comment whether y'all think Murder Inc. could have survived if the 50 Cent beef never happened. Because honestly, that debate still divides hip-hop fans today. By this point, the battle between 50 Cent and Murder Inc. wasn't really about music anymore. 50 had turned the entire situation into psychological warfare. And honestly, this is where the story becomes almost unbelievable looking back. Because instead of simply trying to beat Ja Rule with records, 50 wanted to completely destroy Murder Inc.'s image publicly. That was the goal. Humiliation. Now, one thing you gotta understand about 50 Cent during this era is the man understood marketing on a different level. Seriously, before social media, before memes, before viral trolling became normal, 50 was already weaponizing embarrassment as promotion. That's genius and terrifying. Because once he realized the culture was starting to lean in his direction emotionally, he never let the pressure stop. Now, this is where the G-Unit movement enters the story. And honestly, this might have been one of the smartest trolling campaigns in rap history. Because instead of simply dissing G-Unit back musically, people around the beef started pushing G-Unit, the anti-G-Unit movement. Fans throwing up G-Unit signs, people wearing G-Unit shirts, internet jokes everywhere. And for a minute, it actually looked like it was gaining traction. But then 50 did something genius. Instead of getting emotional, he monetized the disrespect. This man literally started making money off G-Unit merchandise. Think about how crazy that is. Most rappers would have been furious. 50 saw a business opportunity. That perfectly explains the difference between him and most artists from that era. Everything became strategy. Everything became branding. Everything became leverage. And honestly, that little move symbolized the entire war perfectly. Ja Rule and Murder Inc. kept reacting emotionally, while 50 kept turning the chaos into momentum. Now, meanwhile, the internet started becoming more brutal toward Ja Rule publicly. And honestly, this part gets uncomfortable historically. Because once the jokes started fully taking over online, it became hard for people to even discuss Ja Rule seriously anymore. That's devastating for an artist, especially somebody who was genuinely huge just a few years earlier. Now during this period, 50 kept applying pressure nonstop. Interviews, mixtapes, DVD appearances, radio shots. The man never let the beef cool off. And honestly, that's another reason he won culturally. Consistency. He kept the narrative alive constantly. Meanwhile, Murder Inc. looked exhausted. Now, another thing that hurt the label badly was perception around authenticity. This became a major issue, because 50 successfully convinced a large part of hip-hop culture that Ja Rule was fake. Murder Inc. was soft. G-Unit represented the real streets. Now, whether that was fully fair or not, almost doesn't even matter historically. Because once audiences emotionally believe a narrative, that narrative becomes reality culturally. That's what happened here. Now, another major moment during this era was watching how differently the artists handled pressure publicly. 50 looked energized by conflict, almost happy, like he genuinely enjoyed chaos. Meanwhile, Ja Rule often looked frustrated, angry, exhausted, and fans noticed that psychologically, especially during rap beefs. Now, while all this was happening, Ashanti was still trying to survive musically. And honestly, she deserves a lot of credit historically for that, because despite the chaos surrounding Murder Inc., she still maintained a fan base. People still loved Ashanti, especially women listeners. And honestly, that's one of the reasons Murder Inc. nostalgia eventually survived years later, because the music itself still connected emotionally. Now, another thing people overlook is how much the rise of G-Unit affected everything around Murder Inc. Because once G-Unit exploded, they became the new center of hip-hop energy. The mixtapes, the DVDs, the fashion, the internet conversations, everything shifted toward them. And Murder Inc. slowly started feeling tied to the previous era. That's dangerous in music, especially when culture moves fast. Now, eventually, Ja Rule's aura completely changed publicly. And honestly, That may have been the biggest victory 50 ever achieved in the entire war, because before 50, Ja Rule looked untouchable. After 50, people started treating him like a punchline. That's a massive image collapse, especially in hip-hop. And once the audience starts laughing instead of fearing you, it's hard to recover fully. Now eventually, the war slowed down publicly. Not because people became friends, but because the damage was already done. Murder Inc.'s dominance faded. G-Unit became the new movement. The culture shifted permanently. But years later, something unexpected started happening. People started revisiting Murder Inc. music emotionally again. And suddenly, the conversation around Ja Rule and Murder Inc. started changing completely. Looking back now, the craziest part about the Murder Inc. story is this. 50 Cent may have won the war, but Murder Inc. never fully disappeared emotionally. And honestly, that's why this era still gets talked about 20 years later. Because underneath all the jokes, the memes, and the beef, the music still mattered. A lot. Now during the peak of the 50 Cent era, people were so focused on the humiliation of Ja Rule publicly that they almost ignored how massive Murder Inc. really was before the collapse. But as time passed, people started revisiting the music differently, and suddenly fans realized, yo, these records are actually classics. Seriously, go back and listen to Always on Time, Mesmerize, Put It On Me, Down Ass Chick, Rain on Me, Wonderful. Those records still feel like the early 2000s. That's powerful, because real nostalgia music doesn't just remind people of songs, it reminds people of life, middle school, summer vacations, relationships, club nights, car rides. Murder Inc. mastered emotional memory through music. That's why the catalog survived even after the label collapsed publicly. Now, another thing that changed over time was the way people viewed Ja Rule himself, because for years, internet culture basically turned him into a punchline, especially after the Fyre Festival disaster years later. The jokes got endless, but eventually, hip-hop fans started separating the memes from the actual music. And once people revisited the catalog honestly, a lot of fans realized Ja Rule's impact was way bigger than people gave him credit for, especially melodically. Because before a lot of modern rappers started mixing pain, melody, hooks, street records, Ja Rule was already doing it commercially. That influence matters historically. Now, does that mean 50 Cent didn't win? No. 50 absolutely won the war culturally. And honestly, it wasn't even just because of music. 50 won because he controlled perception. That's the key. He controlled the narrative, the jokes, the momentum, the internet conversation, the street energy. And once culture emotionally picked G-Unit over Murder Inc., the outcome became almost impossible to reverse. But even with all that, Murder Inc. still left behind an emotional legacy that survived the war, especially because of Ashanti. Now let's be real, Ashanti aging gracefully culturally helped the entire Murder Inc. legacy, because unlike a lot of artists from that era, people never stopped loving Ashanti emotionally, especially women audiences. And once nostalgia culture exploded online years later, people started revisiting those early 2000s Murder Inc. records heavily. TikTok clips, throwback playlists, R&B nostalgia pages. Suddenly, the music found new life. Now, another major part of the legacy conversation is Irv Gotti. And honestly, Irv became one of the most complicated figures in hip-hop history. Because on one hand, people respect what he built, the hits, the movement, the emotional sound. But on the other hand, his public feud with 50 Cent basically followed him for years. And honestly, that's another reason this story still feels unfinished emotionally. Because even after the peak years ended, the tension never fully disappeared, especially publicly. Now eventually Verzuz helped change the narrative around Murder Inc. too. That's important historically, because once people started hearing those records back to back again, they remembered how dominant the label really was. Hit after hit after hit. And suddenly younger fans started realizing, wait, these dudes actually ran an entire era. That reevaluation matters because history changes over time, especially in hip-hop. Now, another reason people still revisit the Murder Inc. story is because it represents the end of a specific era. The flashy early 2000s era, the melodic street radio era, the MTV and 106 and Park era. After 50 Cent took over, hip-hop got darker again. More aggressive, more mixtape focused, more disrespectful. The energy shifted permanently, and Murder Inc. became the symbol of the era that got replaced That's why the story feels bigger than just rap beef. It feels like one generation of hip hop colliding with another. Now today, people can debate forever. Did 50 go too far? Could Murder Inc. have survived? Was Ja Rule unfairly clowned? Did the FBI situation destroy everything? Would Ashanti have become even bigger elsewhere? But honestly, that's what makes the story legendary. Because there's no simple answer. Just a rise, a war, a collapse, and eventually, nostalgia. And in a strange way, that nostalgia might be the biggest victory Murder Inc. ever got in the end. Because despite everything that happened, people still go back to those records emotionally. That means the music survived. And that's real legacy. If y'all enjoyed this documentary, hit that like button, subscribe to Fake Famous, and comment whether y'all think 50 Cent completely destroyed Murder Inc. or if nostalgia saved their legacy years later. And remember, this is Hip Hop History Month. We got more legendary documentaries, rise and fall stories, rap beefs, and untold music history dropping all month long. Road to 2K starts now, and trust me, we're nowhere near done yet.